Hello, my name's Michael Conneely and I'm making this video about the Notre fire astrology. And what I want to say is, quite frankly, quite obviously, what's happened to the Notre Dame, a major Catholic cathedral in France, is connected to the manifestation of the Great Conjunction that I've done 2 or 3 videos on so far this year, 2019. And basically by Great Conjunction I mean Saturn, Ketu and Pluto in Vedic Sagittarius. And when were they last there? They were last there when Martin Luther pinned his theses to the cathedral door at Wittenberg and brought down the Catholic Church in the north of Europe. Now, it's the energy of this Great Conjunction is one of Reformation and Reform. And I'll be talking later on about how it affects each of us. But it seems that the Catholic Church is particularly prone to receiving strong effect of Reformation. We'll be looking at why. So it's no bad thing that this has happened. It may be a tragedy for, the French people or for the sort of events that went on in Notre Dame. But from the point of view of the energy, it could be said the Catholic Church needs to burn. And okay, what exactly has triggered it? I mean, the Great Conjunction is in the heavens all 2019. Well, what's triggered it is that the Sun has just entered Vedic Aries. So on the day of the fire, and you can see the charts in both Western and Vedic astrology in the blog, and the blog link is down below the video here. So the Sun has just entered the fire sign of Aries. And in fact the Sun is actually square the Great Conjunction. So we've got the Sun at 1 Aries and for example Pluto, remember the Great Conjunction is Saturn, Ketu, Pluto. Pluto is at 29 Sagittarius. And so in fact the Western chart, and you look at the blog to see, it shows this very clear violent red T-square. The Sun, T-square, the nodal axis, and very especially tight square to Pluto, Sun square Pluto, with Sun just having entered Vedic Aries. We'll talk more about the astrology below. But the important thing is that this Great Conjunction was last there when Martin Luther nailed up his theses. It isn't an accident that Notre Dame burns now. And indeed, the Catholic Church is beset by many problems now. And that's another part of the same manifestation of the Great Conjunction. But let's go a bit deeper. I mean, basically the Catholic Church is little to do with Jesus. The Catholic Church is the official religion of the Roman Empire, set up by Constantine. And remember, he didn't convert to Catholicism until his deathbed, so that he could go on sinning fine and okay until he was on his deathbed. But the Catholic Church was an ideal institution to prop up an empire. It's hierarchical, it's legalistic. As I said, nothing to do with what one might glean from the New Testament. Jesus spoke of. And the Catholic Church is like an ideal religion for a Roman Empire. I mean, it's completely cut off from earth spirituality. It denigrates the religion of the earth. So wherever the Catholic Church came, it took over the sacred sites and said, oh, this is hermit so-and-so's site now. Well, it isn't. It was once a sacred site. And, if you look at what the Roman Empire did in human terms, it was horrific. How many million slaves do you think Caesar sent from Gaul to sell in the slave markets in Rome? So I have no grief at the Catholic Church having to face Reformation. The damage it did to me, I feel, is immense, and moreover it's so built on guilt and rules and coercion and threat of punishment that it takes one decades to work through all that and actually be able to consciously perceive the damage it does. And Catholic countries, and I'm speaking here from Ireland, quite widely just don't see the damage it does. They're dumbed down by it. The whole point is the Catholic Church, because it's based on catechism and punishment, puts one out of touch with one's authentic self. And thus, if any intuitions come to one that aren't in touch with Catholic dogma, you simply can't give them the value they need. If any intuitions come to you, well, they're just pushed away. Oh, Father so-and-so said this and he was ever so popular, you know. That's what I had rammed down me. Not a lot to do with Jesus. There was something else I was going to say along those lines. It may come back to me. Can't remember. Anyway, the Irish, I think, would be astounded to know who was the person behind the terrible Anglo-Norman invasion of Ireland in the 12th century. The Norman King of England, following the 1066, the conquest of England by William the Conqueror, his successor decided to invade Ireland, so he chose his two most vicious barons, and you conquer the west and you conquer the east. But who was behind that? The Pope. And why was the Pope behind that? Because the Irish Church didn't fit into the Catholic hierarchy. They weren't paying the fees to Rome. They weren't accepting younger sons of nobility to be priests and bishops, etc. The Pope wanted standardization. The Catholic Church represents standardization. It has to be said. But let's go, we're standing here on Irish soil. Let's go a bit further back. Couple of hours down the road here is Croagh Patrick Mountain. In 432 AD, Saint Patrick did a 40-day retreat on the top of Croagh Patrick Mountain before heading out to convert Ireland to the Church of Rome. And that was a disaster for the Irish. It suited Irish kings because, the Catholic Church props up kings. What happened? Well, there was the Anglo-Norman invasion of Ireland, and then the Irish did dreadfully badly under the later Stuarts, Henry VIII and Queen Elizabeth I. I'm so sorry, did terribly badly under the Tudors, Henry VIII and Queen Elizabeth I. And when the Stuarts came along, there were the plantations, so the Stuart kings sold off portions of Ireland to people who would take out a mortgage, and they would turn up on their spot of land, there's loads of them around here, and say, this land is ours now, pay loads of rent, and if you can't pay, starve your children to get the money. It was as bad as that. There was genocide. And then, of course, it went on to the ascendancy class of the English. So the Catholic Church didn't do Ireland any good, and yet it's the sort of jewel in the crown of Saint Peter, of the Pope. But then, of course, often when we're victims, we feel we have to love the people who harm us. And indeed, I do feel current Irish bureaucracy is quite amazing compared, say, to English bureaucracy, where Maggie Thatcher, and I'm not saying she was a nice person at all, privatised so many of the bureaucratic bodies to free up enterprise. But my sincere impression in Ireland is that there are so many bureaucrats who really, I think, are following a sort of Catholic Church type of model which stifles needed change in Ireland. So let's go a bit more onto the actual astrology of this Reformation, and Reformation is needed. So basically, the whole point is that throughout 2019, the great conjunction, as I call it, of Pluto-Saturn Ketu is in Vedic Sagittarius. Ketu is the south node. And opposite is Rahu, the north node, in Vedic Gemini. Now, Sagittarius, of course, is the sign of religion. It's not the sign of sort of mysticism, vision and shamanism. That's more Pisces. Sagittarius is the sign of dogmatic or organised religion. Jupiter has just entered into Vedic Sagittarius, only into the first degree. See my posts about that, because Jupiter is not being, his energy is not being received well by us, because he's in the Gandanta, because he then moves through Vedic Sagittarius, you know, having to go through Saturn, Ketu and Pluto, and then when he moves on to the next sign, Capricorn, that's his sign of debilitation. I'll say a bit more about working with Jupiter in a moment. But Pluto and Saturn is just amazing revolution. Pluto is atomic explosion. Saturn is containment. What we need to do at the highest, when Saturn and Pluto combine rarely in the heavens, is make a container for our inspired revolution and reformation. And I'll talk about, you know, what's come to me personally in a moment. But we all need to do this. We all need to identify now, what prisons should we smash the walls of now? What prisons in our lives should we demolish? And what inspiration and revolution should we accept? How can we develop that? And as I said, when the Sun moved into Vedic Aries, indeed, Sun being almost exactly square Pluto at the end of Vedic Sagittarius, Notre Dame burns. Oh, and incidentally, Jupiter had just gone retrograde, so, you know, digging the groove deeper for reformation in spirituality. And indeed, Jupiter is in the Gandanta zone, that immaterial zone where water signs change to fire signs. Jupiter at 1 Sagittarius, and the Sun is in the Gandanta zone where water sign changes into fire sign, Sun at 1 Aries. And so great inspiration can come through to those who are open to it when planets are actually in the Gandanta zone in our birth chart or in the heavens. So I just want to say sort of revolutions and reformations that have come through to me. Well, I feel indeed working with a colleague in Arizona, you know, delving really deeply into advanced Vedic astrology, developing those courses which are on my Master Vedic Astrology website. So not only contact with the inspiration of the people who brought Vedic astrology to the West, particularly people like David Frawley and Bepin Bahari, but adding to that, bringing to bear onto the insights, the incredible insights of Vedic astrology, healing, crossover into healing, so that we can, you know, take advantage of the insights of Vedic astrology. And indeed, my wife Maggie Pashley is doing really forefront healings in things like soul realignment and future life progression. Other revolution that's come to me personally, I've very much been working with the high energy rocks on the sacred sites here in the west of Ireland. And the rocks around here are often very strong quartz content. And I believe this was what attracted the peoples who built the megaliths here. And I believe their shamans and priests augmented the energies in those rocks when they built the megaliths for their beloved dead. And you can still feel them if you go off the beaten track and find the ones that aren't too near traffic or haven't been dug to bits by archaeologists. And moreover than that, Well, I've been doing development work all last year, and it's shortly to come on air, to meet gods and goddesses of the ancient Irish and of the ancient Norse. And it's amazing, if one does this in a powerful way, what these gods and goddesses can do. It truly is, you know, to do vision work, to see the full power, for example, of great goddess Danu, how healing that can be of difficulties we can have. And lastly, I've been developing planet journeys. So, for example, I worked with a client very recently who had a weak Jupiter in her chart. And as I said, Jupiter's reception is further weakened for all humanity at the moment. And so we boosted the presence and the energetic presence of Jupiter. And it's so wonderful, you know, have a picture of Jupiter, a really good one, you know, Brihaspati, have it by you, and keep bringing in the enlargement, the purpose and the blessing of Jupiter. So that briefly is how the Reformation energy has come into my life. But this video was indeed about the fact that it has come into the building of Notre Dame, and Notre Dame has burned. Okay, thank you.